Es para COE una auténtica oportunidad el poder colaborar con Casa África en este decidido encuentro que nos preside como José Ramón Fernández como jefe de área de la Secretaría de Estado de Comercio, ¿no? Bien, me querría también saludar a Álvaro Rodríguez, subdirector de Relaciones Económicas Bilaterales del Ministerio de Asuntos Exteriores, y a todos los embajadores y los consejeros comerciales y todos los representantes de los países que hoy intervenimos, ¿no? Para nosotros, para COE, es una auténtica satisfacción estar aquí con motivo del Doing Business 2018, en el cual Casa África promociona, empuja, y tenemos la visión importante de una importante cabeza económica como es Ulia Ulku, en el cual nos hace su informe del Banco Mundial sobre los negocios en África. La presentación de los resultados para nosotros es una buena oportunidad para destacar los avances que se realizan en muchos países africanos, las enormes oportunidades que tenemos. Hemos de recordar que ya desde hasta noviembre del 2017 ha habido un incremento muy considerable en las relaciones comerciales y que se han alcanzado ya y superado los 36.000 millones de euros. Eso es una bonita cifra que ya nos perfila en un escenario de alto interés, como es en este caso todo el comercio, el trade, que se genera entre el continente y nuestra querida España. Son muy numerosas las empresas españolas, en las cuales son punteras en sectores de actividad como las infraestructuras, la energía, el medio ambiente, alimentación, y que desarrollan muy importantes proyectos financieros en todo el continente, y con el respaldo de las grandes instituciones financieras mundiales, como es el Banco Mundial y el Banco Africano del Desarrollo. África es un continente que, según las predicciones del Banco Mundial, alcanzará una población de 2.400 millones de habitantes en el 2050. Ello experimenta y genera un rápido crecimiento y transformación económica y social, motivada, entre otras cosas, por ese aumento de la población, pero especialmente porque la urbanización que está generando ese crecimiento en las zonas urbanas y el emprendimiento que hay, que genera nuevos modelos de economía. España, concretamente, como decíamos, es uno de los mayores jugadores en diferentes sectores relacionados, como decía antes, con infraestructuras, con energía, con medio ambiente, con la salud, importante, la agroindustria y como muchos otros sectores que hemos dicho. Bien, es una estrategia global de nuestras empresas, que se halla con la Administración General del Estado las acciones y medidas de acompañamiento para fomentar esa mayor presencia empresarial en toda África. La iniciativa del Ministerio de Asuntos Exteriores y de Cooperación, el MAEC, de elaborar un plan África, supone en ese sentido una excelente oportunidad para revitalizar las relaciones con el continente desde un enfoque multidimensional. En su faceta económica y empresarial, lo que consideramos imprescindible va a ser reforzar las visitas institucionales de alto nivel. En este momento ya tenemos programadas 2 visitas que acude nuestro presidente del Gobierno en el continente. Desarrollar una estrategia del sector privado del 5º Plan Director de Cooperación, con el fin de permitir una mayor implicación en los organismos empresariales en consecución de los objetivos de la Agencia 2030, adecuar nuevos instrumentos financieros para facilitar la presencia empresarial española en África, mejores oportunidades y posibilidades en el Plan Europeo de Inversiones Exteriores y de Cooperación Delegada, adoptar mejor el Fond PRODE a las necesidades del sector privado, fomentar el desarrollo de los modelos de negocio dirigidos a la base de la pirámide y reforzar vínculos con el sector empresarial africano, con lo cual eso generamos unas sinergias y entre las organizaciones empresariales. Antes de finalizar, querría nuevamente agradecer al director general de Casa África su buena predisposición para esta colaboración con COE en la identificación y desarrollo de iniciativas que impulsan las relaciones económicas y comerciales con el continente africano. Muchas gracias. Y con tal motivo daría la palabra a don José Ramón Fernández, que como desde su visión, desde el área de negocios, del área de África, la Secretaría de Estado de Comercio, nuestra amiga Marisa Poncela, que es la secretaria de Estado, pues José Ramón nos hará su reflexión y su visión. Muchas gracias.
Muy bien, muchas gracias, Joaquín. Buenos días. 5 minutos. En este plazo voy a intentar darles una visión de conjunto de qué es lo que aporta la Secretaría de Estado de Comercio a las empresas españolas en el proceso de internacionalización en el que están sumidas desde hace algún tiempo. Nosotros proporcionamos como 4 factores distintos. Proporcionamos información, acompañamiento, tejido institucional y financiación. Esa información la tienen disponible en nuestras instalaciones, en nuestra web. Pueden ustedes localizarla en cualquiera de las áreas de que dispone la Secretaría de Estado. Y en el caso concreto de África, la canalizamos a través del área de África. El acompañamiento lo hacen las 8 oficinas comerciales. Dirán, ¿8? ¿No son 13? No, ahora hablaremos de cuál es el objeto de este análisis. No es el continente, es el continente menos los 5 países del norte. ¿Por qué? Porque los consideramos mediterráneos y ellos también se consideran mediterráneos y por tanto no suelen entrar en el análisis. Por tanto, 8 oficinas comerciales que acompañan a nuestras empresas y a nuestras instituciones al objeto de conectar de la mejor manera posible con sus interlocutores en destino. El tejido institucional pues son los acuerdos que tenemos establecidos, por ejemplo, los de promoción y protección recíproca de inversiones, que son competencia nuestra directamente y de la Unión Europea, o los convenios para la evitación de doble imposición, que son competencia de Hacienda, pero que nosotros también gestionamos en alguna medida a través de las empresas. Y por último, la financiación, que en nuestro caso, específicamente en nuestro caso, se concentra en el Fondo para la Internacionalización de la Empresa, FIEM, que financia tanto estudios como proyectos como inversiones. Toda la información se la puedo dar en su momento si se dirigen a mí. Yo estoy encantado porque es mi trabajo y además me gusta. Esa financiación es bilateral, la nuestra, también a través de las instituciones financieras multilaterales, que tenemos mucho que decir. Aquí están presentes los representantes del Banco Africano de Desarrollo, vamos, del Banco no, de la Administración Española en el Banco Africano de Desarrollo. ¿Cuál es el objeto del análisis que nosotros realizamos? Pues efectivamente los países de África, que son los que les he dicho. Hay mucha gente que cuando desconoce el continente nos dice, bueno, África es un país que está emergiendo, es un continente que está emergiendo. Bueno, es un subcontinente cuyos países se parecen entre sí como un huevo a una castaña, fundamentalmente. Es decir, nosotros no podemos hacer análisis globales, tenemos que hacer análisis individualizados. Los países son disímiles, tienen características completamente diferenciadas y eso nos obliga a hacer los análisis concretos en relación con esas características diferenciadas. No les pongo ejemplos porque si no nos salimos de los 5 minutos, pero en todo caso tenemos muy presente la evolución que han experimentado esos países desde su nacimiento prácticamente, es decir, desde la descolonización. Tengo que hablar en términos globales esta vez, a pesar de lo que acabo de decir. Desde ese momento, en los años 60, la línea que siguieron los países occidentales fue la ayuda oficial al desarrollo, es decir, las transferencias de recursos desde los países más avanzados a los menos avanzados, en el bien entendido que esto serviría para detonar el desarrollo de estos países. 60 años y 100 millones de dólares después, efectivamente ese no ha sido el camino adecuado para el desarrollo. El camino adecuado entendemos que es la globalización, es decir, el comercio internacional y la inversión extranjera directa. Y a ello estamos aplicando todos nuestros recursos, que son básicamente informativos de acompañamiento, institucionales y financieros. Los países se han lanzado, muchos de los países africanos se han lanzado al comercio internacional y algunos de ellos han fiado enormemente en la evolución de los precios de las materias primas, que es la concentración fundamental de su actividad en el exterior. Y eso tiene, como toda moneda, dos caras. Cuando los precios están al alza, los países se benefician. Cuando los precios caen, los países sufren las consecuencias. De manera que están intentando diversificar rápida y profundamente sus estructuras económicas al objeto de hacer frente a esas situaciones, digamos que periódicas, en las que los precios evolucionan y les condicionan enormemente. Y están reforzando sus instituciones. Lo están haciendo de forma muy rápida, muy ágil, muy acelerada. Y están estableciendo los parámetros fundamentales del buen gobierno, que son precisamente las estructuras que han servido a los demás países del mundo para desarrollarse a su vez. África no es distinto de los demás. Y en ese sentido hay varios casos de éxito que no querría dejar pasar: Botswana, Costa de Marfil, Mauricio, Namibia, Ruanda, incluso Djibouti, Etiopía. Quizás si se fijan se dan cuenta de que el único país verdaderamente grande es Etiopía, 100 millones de habitantes, pero todos los que he mencionado y muchos otros más están evolucionando fuertemente, reforzando sus parámetros de buen gobierno. El último de los cuales, no voy a explicar con detalle, es la financiación. Y ahí volvemos, la financiación. ¿Cómo podemos, y ya con eso termino, cómo podemos arbitrar una financiación que se ajuste a los parámetros de exigencia de las instituciones financieras multilaterales y otras que condicionan nuestra actuación, como la OCDE? Muy bien, pues tenemos que tener en cuenta las características de esos países. Fíjense, de los 49 países que hay en África Negra, 34 son países HIPIC. A lo mejor ese acrónimo no les dice nada. Highly Indebted Poor Country, es decir, países pobres muy endeudados que fueron rescatados en su día, a los que se les quitó el enorme peso de la deuda externa en un elevadísimo porcentaje y a los que estamos volviendo a prestar, condicionados a las restricciones del Fondo Monetario Internacional. De manera que cuando ustedes quieran realizar alguna operación con algún país, nos preguntan por favor hasta dónde podemos llegar. Porque si ese país se está volviendo a endeudar peligrosamente, tendremos verdaderas dificultades para hacerlo. Pero si el país ha encajado perfectamente en las limitaciones que ha establecido la iniciativa HIPIC, en ese caso nosotros estaremos absolutamente encantados de poder realizar las operaciones que absorben todos nuestros esfuerzos día a día. Resumo porque los 5 minutos están alcanzados ya. Estamos a su disposición. Nosotros podemos proveerles de todo cuanto necesitan para alcanzar el éxito en sus negocios en África. La Secretaría de Estado de Comercio y yo en concreto estamos a su disposición. Muchas gracias. Buenos días.
Gracias, José Ramón. Y daría la palabra a Álvaro Rodríguez. Álvaro Rodríguez es subdirector de Relaciones Económicas Bilaterales del Ministerio de Asuntos Exteriores y Cooperación.
Bueno, muchas gracias, vicepresidente. Yo agradezco mucho la invitación que me han extendido CEO y Casa de África y me siento muy honrado de compartir esta mesa con ellos, así como con la economista Julia Ucu y con el colega José Ramón Ferrandis de la Secretaría de Estado de Comercio. Creo que es digno de mención que en el ranking de los 10 países que más han mejorado en cuanto al clima empresarial y de inversión, figuran 3 países africanos: Nigeria, Malawi y Zambia. Muchos otros han aplicado reformas en el mismo sentido. La región tiene que superar otros problemas. Pero dicho eso, está en un proceso de reformas que será largo, pero que creo que es positivo y loable y merecedor de apoyo. El informe Doing Business, en lo que se refiere a África, es un buen indicador para empresas y también para gobiernos en un continente que tiene una importancia trascendente para el resto del mundo. Y quiero explicar brevemente por qué. El pasado mes de noviembre tuvo lugar la cumbre Unión Europea-África. Uno de los asuntos preponderantes de la agenda era el empleo, especialmente el empleo para los jóvenes. Este aspecto, las políticas de crecimiento y el énfasis en el empleo de los jóvenes es crítico. Como ya ha dicho el vicepresidente, África alcanzó los 1.000 millones de población el año pasado. Con el actual patrón demográfico podría albergar casi la mitad de la población del mundo en 2050. Para entonces Nigeria se habría convertido en el tercer país más poblado de la Tierra. Un porcentaje muy importante de esa población tiene menos de 35 años. Cualquier política que no tenga en cuenta la prioridad del empleo en el marco del crecimiento demográfico será escasamente práctica. La Unión Europea es consciente de estas premisas y de la urgencia de allegar recursos privados y recursos públicos. el llamado Plan Europeo de Inversiones, que movilizará 44.000 millones de euros y que pone el énfasis en la energía, la infraestructura y el empleo, parte precisamente de ese conjunto de nociones. Y también es el núcleo doctrinal en que se fundamenta el nuevo Plan para África, que está elaborando, como ya se ha aludido aquí, el Ministerio de Asuntos Exteriores y que debe de estar ultimado antes del verano. La relación de España con África en su conjunto es más significativa de lo que se piensa. África es el destino de más del 6% de nuestras exportaciones y más del 7% de nuestras importaciones. El comercio con África es mayor que el que tenemos con América Latina, Norteamérica, Medio Oriente o Pacífico. África subsahariana incluye uno de los 3 principales suministradores de crudo a España, que es Nigeria, y 2 socios comerciales muy importantes en Sudáfrica y Angola. Es cierto que el grueso de la actividad económica española se desarrolla en el norte de África por razones que son función de la historia, la geografía y la afinidad cultural. Precisamente, ese modelo de cooperación económica con nuestros vecinos puede tener sentido también en otras áreas de África. Y la lección número 1 para llevar a cabo ese efecto dinamizador es que se precisa inversión. Estados Unidos y China son los principales inversores en África. Los 28 estados de la Unión Europea tienen una inversión agregada en el resto del mundo del orden de 7.000 millones de euros. Una cifra, perdón, de 7 billones de euros. Una cifra que supera la suma del Producto Interior Bruto de Reino Unido y de Alemania. Pues bien, solo un 4% de esos 7 billones de euros que tiene invertidos la Unión Europea en el resto del mundo está localizado en África. En el mismo sentido, solo un 1% de la inversión española en el exterior, de la inversión directa española en el exterior, está localizada en África. Por tanto, españoles y europeos en general tenemos que hacer más. Necesitamos crear partenariados, ayudar a poner las bases para crear condiciones de estabilidad y predictibilidad sobre el terreno, facilitar más y mejor financiación y cobertura para proyectos y empezar a ver algunos de esos países como socios iguales y valiosos. Confío, por tanto, en que esta presentación de hoy va a contribuir al objetivo de definir los retos y las oportunidades y la estrategia llamada a superar los unos y aprovechar las otras. Muchas gracias.
Muchas gracias, Álvaro. Daría la palabra a Luis Padrón, director general de Casa África. Muchas gracias, Luis. Tienes la palabra.
Gracias, presidente. Muy buenos días a todos. En primer lugar, quisiera agradecer a la COE por su predisposición y por su profesionalidad. No se oye, ¿no? ¿Se oye? No. ¿Sí?
Espera que yo...
Vale, ok, ahora. Sí, nada. Como decía, quiero agradecer inicialmente a la COE la predisposición y la profesionalidad que siempre nos acoge para presentar estos informes económicos de referencia sobre el continente africano. Nosotros cada año nos gusta traer aquí, a Madrid y a algunas otras ciudades españolas, hasta tarde iremos a Valencia para presentar este mismo informe, 4 grandes informes de referencia internacional y que tiene que ver mucho con el continente africano. Este es el Doing Business. Cada año invitamos a un consejero, a un consultor del Banco Mundial, que viene especialmente de Washington, para ponernos al día en cómo van el clima de negocio en las economías africanas. Presentamos también anualmente el African Economic Outlook, es decir, cuáles son las perspectivas del continente africano desde el punto de vista de la OCDE y del Banco Africano de Desarrollo. El 9 de marzo, en esta misma sala, presentaremos con las Naciones Unidas el informe sobre el transporte marítimo internacional y especialmente con una parte específica hacia el continente africano, en cómo las grandes líneas y los grandes puertos africanos cada vez están teniendo mayor importancia en el comercio internacional. Y tenemos también una línea de trabajo muy potente con la Organización Mundial del Turismo. Hemos realizado ya algunas publicaciones y este año presentaremos, aquí está su directora para África de la OMT, presentaremos un informe sobre la marca África en el turismo, lo importante que es el turismo en África y la presencia o la intención nuestra de que las empresas españolas cada vez estén más presentes en ese continente. Como digo, estos 4 informes ¿Por qué los traemos? ¿Por qué los presentamos? Por una razón doble. En primer lugar, porque queremos ir creando ambiente africano en la empresa española. Lo han dicho las personas que me han antecedido en el uso de la palabra. Es cierto que cada vez la empresa española está más interesada por África, pero la intención de estos informes, como digo, es crear ambiente en la empresa africana. Y la otra parte es poner en valor ese crecimiento de las economías africanas. Y poner en valor también cómo ese clima de negocios y la facilidad para hacer negocios está creciendo a unos ritmos muy importantes en el continente africano y especialmente en el África subsahariana. Casa África, yo creo que casi todos la conocen, no solo actuamos en el ámbito económico, también hacemos mucha diplomacia cultural. La semana que viene estamos en Guinea Ecuatorial en un acto de promoción de cantantes y músicos africanos para venir en su momento a España. Cada año elegimos un país determinado y hemos firmado un gran acuerdo con la Fundación Incide de las Cámaras de Comercio para la implantación de 9 programas en 9 países africanos para el fomento de la emprendeduría en el continente africano. Hemos seleccionado, como digo, 9 países y ahí vamos a llevar estos programas para el fomento de la emprendeduría con el conocimiento del trabajo de los emprendedores y de las instituciones españolas. Como digo, este es el objetivo de la presentación de este informe, que creo que es muy bueno que los consultores del Banco Mundial nos hagan una referencia, cuál es la visión, cuáles son las tendencias que ellos están viendo en las economías africanas. Y yo creo que no hay mejor posibilidad que cederle la palabra a la consultora del banco, que ha venido expresamente de Washington a Madrid para presentarnos las conclusiones de este último informe de 2018. Muchísimas gracias, presidente, por darnos la oportunidad de presentar a la empresa española este informe.
Gracias, Luis, y felicidades por el excelente trabajo que realizáis desde Casa África. It's now the time to listen to you. Thank you very much, Ulia Ulku. Ulia Ulku is the senior economist of the Global Indicators Development Economics from the World Bank Group, and it's a good, high pleasure to be with you and to now listen to you. Thank you very much. It's the time, your floor.
Thank you all for taking the time to participate in today's event. Let me first thank Casa África for inviting me to this very important event. I have a keen interest in research in Sub-Saharan Africa, and I'm very, very happy to be here today to share the findings of Doing Business 2018 results with you. Before going through the results on Sub-Saharan Africa, let me briefly introduce what we do in Doing Business. I don't know how this moves. Right one, okay. Thank you. Okay, sure. So, Doing Business project measures business regulations that affect small and medium-sized enterprises throughout their life cycle. We use standardized case studies across all 190 economies so that we can compare apples to apples. And we focus mainly in the largest business city of the economies. We only measure the formal economy. We do not include the measures in informal economy. We collect data in 11 business regulatory areas, including starting a business, construction permits, obtaining electricity, registering property, getting credit, protecting minority investors, trading across borders, paying taxes, enforcing contracts, and resolving insolvency. These areas are obviously not the only ones that affect the SMEs. However, they are the most important regulatory areas that have an impact on these firms. The first Doing Business report, called Doing Business 2004, is launched 15 years ago in 2003. At the time, we collected data only on 5 topics, including 23 indicators from 133 economies, with the help of over 800 contributors. Today, 15 years later, we collect data on 11 topics, including 120 indicators from 190 economies, and with the help of over 13,000 contributors. So, what has happened during these 15 years? In total, close to 3,200 business reforms have been implemented by the governments of 190 economies. We have visited 160 economies to collect data, and our contribution base is over 100,000. 925 of the reforms are directly inspired by our project, Doing Business. This year, every year, we publish the data of the 10 countries that recorded the highest improvement in their ease of doing business score. You see the one we have in Doing Business 2018 report. These 10 economies improved their regulatory business environment as measured by Doing Business the most. As you can see, 3 of these top improvers are from Sub-Saharan Africa, including Malawi, Zambia, and Nigeria. These top performers mainly focused on areas including starting a business, dealing with construction permits, getting credit, and paying taxes. We see the most highest numbers of reforms in these areas among these 10 economies. Another very interesting finding for the region is that during the past 15 years, Sub-Saharan Africa has the highest numbers of reforms in business regulations, with total 798 reforms, constituting the 25% of all reforms globally. Again, last year, Sub-Saharan African economies recorded the highest numbers of reforms to improve their business regulations. 83 economies, we recorded 83 reforms, and 75% of the Sub-Saharan economies implemented at least one reform in the 11 areas we measure. So what these reforms mean, actually? Well, they translate into real efficiency gains in various areas of business regulations. Here, I present only 4 of these areas, just to see how these reforms actually make a difference in terms of the day-to-day functioning of small and medium-sized enterprises when dealing with the business regulations. For example, in 2004, it took 166 days in Democratic Republic of Congo to register a limited liability company. Today, 15 years later, it takes only 7 days to register a company. You can imagine how this could affect an aspiring entrepreneur. Now that entrepreneur has to spend only 7 days to formalize, to register his company, whereas in 2004, he or she had to spend 166 days. Similarly, we see a big improvement in paying taxes, regulations around paying taxes. For example, in China, in 2007, it took 832 hours to file and pay taxes. Now it takes only 207 hours. In Belarus, in 2006, it took 230 days to register a property. Today, it takes only 3 days to register a property. In Mexico, in 2006, it took 165 days to get a permit to do construction. Today, it takes only 82 days. So these reforms result in real efficiency gains for private sector when complying with the regulatory regulations of the government. Now, in this graph, sorry, it's too small probably for... I'm sorry, but I will hopefully, I will explain some of them. So this table shows 48 Sub-Saharan African economies, rankings, and the ease of doing business scores in the latest report of doing business. Here, the highest ranking economy is Mauritius, with a ranking, global ranking of 25, followed by Rwanda with a ranking of 41, and Kenya with a ranking of 80. The economies that rank lowest, you know, the top 8 economies, as you can see, are fragile states. Some of them have joined doing business recently. What is most interesting in this graph is that, as you can see with the arrows pointed upwards, is that the majority of the economies have improved their ease of doing business score from last year, meaning that the governments implemented reforms and put in efforts to improve the business regulatory environment in their economies. Another interesting observation from this table, as you can see with the red stars, is that 3 economies that reformed have the highest improvement in their ease of doing business score, as I mentioned a few minutes ago. These are Zambia, Malawi, and Nigeria. Now, this graph again shows the 48 Sub-Saharan African economies. There are 3 different sets of information in this graph. The horizontal line, red line at the bottom of the vertical line, shows the scores, average of the lowest 3 scores of the economies. And the blue horizontal line at the top of the vertical line shows the highest 3 scores of the countries in the 10 areas that we measure. And the yellow dots in the middle shows the average ease of doing business score of the economies. The longer the line in a given economy shows that the efficiency of the business regulations across those 10 indicators that I just mentioned is quite varied across those 10 indicators. The shorter the line means that the economy has more homogenized regulatory environment in terms of its efficiency and quality. For example, Rwanda, which is one of the best performers in terms of reforms, and also the score, has the shortest line, indicating that Rwanda has a pretty homogeneous, overall, efficient regulatory area, regulatory efficiency and quality in the 10 areas that we measure. This graph shows the improvements in the ease of doing business scores of 48 sub-Saharan economies since 2004. So the longer the bar graph shows the highest improvement in the ease of doing business score. As we can see, Rwanda has improved the most since 2004 in its doing business score, followed by Senegal and Sierra Leone and other economies. As you can see, most of the economies have improved their business environment substantially during the last few years. Last two economies record very low improvement. That's because they have joined doing business during the recent years. Here we report the total number of reforms in sub-Saharan African economies by topic. I'm sorry that probably you are not able to read it, but in each of the yellow bars we write the names of the countries that have reformed in the indicator shown next to those bars. From the length of those yellow bars, you can see that the highest numbers of reforms in sub-Saharan Africa took place in starting a business, trading across borders, and dealing with construction permits, with 15 reforms in the first two and the 14 reforms in the dealing with construction permits. In sub-Saharan Africa, in this year's report, Kenya has the highest numbers of reforms, with 6 reforms in total. Nigeria, Mauritania, Senegal, and Rwanda had the second highest numbers of reforms, with 5 reforms in each area. And Malawi, Mauritius, and Niger had reforms in 4 different areas of business regulations, followed by Zambia, Angola, Benin, and Cabo Verde, who reformed their business regulations in 3 areas. What we also observe from this table is that the least number of reforms, as shown at the end of the table, with the shorter bars, took place in the legal indicators, including enforcing contracts, resolving insolvency, labor market regulations, and protecting minority investors. This is not only specific to sub-Saharan Africa. In general, globally, we observe fewer numbers of reforms in legal indicators. And the reason is that it takes longer times for governments to reform their laws, because it involves in changing a lot of laws and regulations, and the governments cannot just change it from one year to another. They have to have a holistic view of their legal system. Therefore, it takes longer to reform in these indicators. Whereas in the indicators which we call time and motion, which involves in paying fees to the government to, for example, to get a permit for construction, or to wait for the several documents and regulations, governments can act faster on these. They can decrease the fees from, in a matter of few days, and they can decrease the regulatory procedures easier than the legal procedures. Now, in the next 9 slides, I'm going to try to give you a brief information on each indicator that we measure, how the Sub-Saharan Africa has performed in improving the efficiency of the areas that we measure from 2013 until 2017's In other words, during the past 5 years. So the yellow bars show the score of the regions, all regions, in 2013, reported in 2014 report, and the blue bars show the scores in 2017, reported in 2018 report. I indicate the Sub-Saharan Africa's scores with a red circle, red square. So in starting a business, Sub-Saharan Africa decreased the time and the cost of business registration quite significantly during the past 5 years. It decreased the time by 7 days and the cost by 20%. In 2013, it took for an entrepreneur to register its limited liability company close to 31 days on average of 48 sub-Saharan African economies. Today, it takes 24 days. In 2013, it costed for an entrepreneur to register its business close to 70% of per capita income. Today, it takes 50% of per capita income. There is a lot of variation, as you can imagine, across the 48 sub-Saharan African economy in their efficiency of registering business. I just would like to give some examples. For example, the shortest time that an entrepreneur can register his business is 4 days, and that's in Rwanda and Burundi. And in Mauritius, an entrepreneur can register his business in 5 days. The longest time is found in Eritrea. So an entrepreneur who wants to register his business in Eritrea has to spend 84 days. In Somalia, he has to spend 70 days. And in Namibia, he has to spend 66 days. So there is a lot of variation across the economies in sub-Saharan Africa in the time and cost of registering a business. But the good news is that the economies are highly active in improving the regulatory efficiency and the quality of the business regulations as well as other regulations. As you can see in this graph, a big improvement in both the time and cost. And as you will see in the following slides, in almost all areas, the region has recorded high improvements. So the next I present cost, time, and before that, actually, I just wanted to just briefly give you some information on why business, making the business registration easier is important. Probably starting a business, the regulations around starting a business has gotten the most attention by researchers. There are a lot of research and very good research, the natural experiments. And they found that when the registration is easier, when entrepreneurs do not spend a lot of time and money to register their businesses, they are more likely to register. Why is this important? Well, it's very important because when the cost of registering business is high, those companies just don't register. So then they stay in informal sector. And most of these companies are, small companies, but also owned by the poorer entrepreneurs. So if the registration is prohibitive, these people will remain in the informal sector, will be very, under very fragile conditions without any safety nets of the governments. There will be less employment because informal sector always is less productive than formal sector. Most importantly, the tax base of government will be smaller because it cannot tax the formal informal sector. So the implications for economic growth and development and employment is quite significant. Next, I show the efforts of the 48 Sub-Saharan African economies in obtaining license to do construction. I show here the time and the cost of obtaining a license. As you can see, the time has decreased by 20 days during the last 5 years in Sub-Saharan Africa. It used to take about 168 days to obtain a construction permit in Sub-Saharan Africa. Today, it takes about 148 days. It is in the middle of the other regions, meaning that it's it's closer to the efficient regions than the inefficient regions. So it's not doing bad at all in terms of the time it takes to obtain construction permits. In the cost of obtaining a permit, which is shown in the right of the graph, Sub-Saharan Africa has a quite costly procedures, even though it decreased the cost by 2 percentage points since 2013. Well, the efficiency of construction permit also has big implications for private sector, and there is also a lot of research in this area. One of these research papers show that the entrepreneurs consider the construction regulations as one of the most important factors in locating their businesses. Obtaining an electricity connection, probably this is the area where that needs most attention in Sub-Saharan Africa. Even though the region has recorded a huge improvement in time and the cost, it decreased the time by 20 days and the cost by 1,000% of per capita income. However, the cost is still substantially high. Today, in order for a small and medium-sized enterprise to get connected to an electricity, it has to pay close to 3,800% of per capita income. This is extraordinarily high compared to all other regions. Even the South Asian region, that is the next most expensive region, it takes 1,000 and close to 1,200% of per capita GDP. It's needless to say the importance of having cheap and reliable electricity for development. Everything from education, health to production is related to electricity. In fact, in Sub-Saharan Africa, one of the reasons that, for example, internet use per person is lower is related to the reliability and the reach of the electricity to different parts of the economies. Registering property is another very important area for both government and the private sector. And making this area efficient is useful for both. We see that Sub-Saharan Africa is not doing bad at all in terms of the time it takes registering a property. but in terms of the cost of registering a property is among the highest, as you can see in the right-hand corner of the graph. Probably registering, a property is one of the most important regulatory areas for small firms. In countries where the firms and individuals, where individuals do not have proper titles on their properties and lands, they do not have access to finance, because the first thing banks ask when they ask for loan is the collateral. And you cannot give your home and land as a collateral if you don't have a title. So there is a big link between the efficient regulations around registering property and access to finance. And also in terms of the participation of the individuals in the formal economy. In enforcing contracts, region is among the costliest, right after East Asia and Pacific. It takes 44% of the claim to enforce a commercial contract through courts, and it takes about 656 days. Compared to other regions, they are not too high, but still there is a lot of room for improvement. Obviously, an efficient and good quality judiciary system is key for development, as has been researched by many economists and lawyers and the scholars. The institutions are key for development. And in resolving insolvency, where we measure the cost and time of the insolvency procedures and the outcome of this procedure, again, the region is not performing well. Although the difference compared to other regions is not very high. Again, in countries with efficient bankruptcy laws that protect the creditors when the firms are financially stressed, the systems that guarantee the loans, repayments to the creditors, and the systems that help the firms that are economically viable but just under financial stress to survive are the best practice economies, and those economies tend to have more access to credit because creditors have confidence in the laws and regulations and the procedures, and therefore they are easily lent to the small and medium-sized firms. And of course, these laws, the laws that protect or that help the firms who are not able to pay their debts, but who are productive and can continue, also tend to have higher employment rate and higher productivity. Sorry, we have a lot of indicators, so I'm coming to the end. Because the region is so active in all of the indicators, I wanted to give you a glimpse of what they have been doing. Another area is paying taxes. It's one of the areas that have the highest numbers of reforms globally. And although Sub-Saharan Africa has more cumbersome regulations around paying taxes, it is also the region that has the highest improvement in this area. It decreased the regulatory, the time spent on filing taxes and filing and paying taxes by 24 hours. and the total tax rate by 3.6 percentage point during the last 5 years. Again, the research finds that the economies with efficient tax system, also the economies with higher number of entrepreneurs. And the high tax rates discourage private investment, and as well as private domestic investment, as well as foreign investment. So it's important for economies to find their own optimum tax rates. And of course, it's in the interest of government to decrease the burden, both in terms of time and in terms of the time spent by the entrepreneurs to filing and paying taxes, because the easier for an entrepreneur to comply with the tax codes, the more likely that they will pay. In some countries, tax codes are so complicated that the individuals cannot even file their own tax documents. They have to hire a professional, have to pay about $50. Of course, in these economies, it's more likely that the people will be less willing to comply than if it's easy to file. Obviously, trading. Trade is one of the areas that Sub-Saharan Africa has been working a lot during the last decade, from all different aspects, but most importantly, the infrastructure. The countries in the region are putting in a lot of efforts improving the logistics of trade. They decreased during the last 5 years, they decreased the time to export and import, 10 days. However, the cost of trading, complying with the regulations to trade in the customs and borders is still high, as you can see in this graph. It's among the highest. So there is a big room for improvement in this respect, especially given the fact that trade is very important for all the economies, but even most important for developing economies, as well as in economies in Sub-Saharan Africa. Now, in the remaining part of my presentation, I would like to just give you a bit more detailed information on the selected economies that, for example, the 3 economies, Malawi, Nigeria, and Zambia, that have made to the top 10 improvers, as well as Mauritania and Morocco, because there is an interest, I understand, by Casa África in that particular country. Let me just walk you through very briefly on what these countries have done during the last year in terms of their reform efforts and in terms of how they have been performing in the 10 areas that we measure. Malawi is among the top 10 improvers. Malawi has reformed in 4 areas of doing business, including construction permits, getting credit, trading across borders, and resolving insolvency. In construction permits, the government decreased the fees substantially. In getting credit, it's established a new bureau and introduced new codes on the bankruptcy procedures. In trading across borders, one of the most important reforms in trading across borders is the electronization of the procedures. This is very important in several aspects. It's very easy for traders and freight forwarders to process the documents through online. But it's also very important for reducing corruption. As you know, all over the world, customs are among the sectors that has big potential for corruption. So the more automized the procedures in these areas, the less room for corruption. So it's very important to see that countries bring in place electronized data management in customs. And one of them is called ASICUDA, which is very famous across all the economies. I think it's promoted by UN, if I'm not wrong. And so one of the reforms the country Malawi had taken was to improve the electronic data management program to improve the efficiency of trading across borders. And in resolving insolvency, the country introduced a reorganization procedure to make the insolvency smoother and to help the companies to survive the insolvency processes. Let me just move to the areas of the rankings in Malawi. This is, I'm sure you are familiar with this web graph. The edges of the blue area, the longer the edges of the blue area shows the highest ranking in that indicator. So by that, we see that Malawi is doing the best in getting credit, registering property, and protecting minority investors. So it has the highest ranking in these areas. It has the lowest ranking in getting electricity, starting a business, and enforcing contracts. Another Sub-Saharan economy that made to the top 10 improvers globally is Nigeria. Nigeria has always been very engaging, and they are very, very active in reforming their business environment. This year, they had reforms in 5 areas of doing business out of the 10 areas. These include starting a business. They had an electronic procedures. They had reform in construction permitting. They increased the transparency of the information in getting permits. They had a reform in registering property. Again, they increased the transparency of the procedures in registering property. They established a modern collateral registration and improved their getting credit. And they decreased the hours spent by entrepreneurs on filing taxes. You know, it was last year it was 429 hours that an entrepreneur has to spend on complying with taxes. This year it's 360 hours. The areas that the country performed the best is getting credit, protecting minority investors, and enforcing contracts. You know, these are all legal areas, which means that the country already moved to improving the legal framework of the economy. In the areas that the country performs rather poorly is trading across borders, registering property, obtaining electricity, and paying taxes. The third country among the top improvers is Zambia. Zambia had reforms in 3 areas. It improved getting credit by adopting a new law in collateral registry, by bringing an online platform in filing and paying taxes, and by implementing the electronic database in customs. The areas that the country ranked the best is getting credit, paying taxes, and obtaining construction permits. And the areas that the country can improve is getting electricity, trading across borders, and registering property. Here, of course, we cannot go without Rwanda, because Rwanda is the all-time highest best reformer in Sub-Saharan Africa. It has reformed the most in the region. It's very active in improving the business environment, and it's the second highest, it has the second highest ease of doing business score in the region. So I have to give a bit information on Rwanda as well. Last year, in 2017, Rwanda reformed in 5 areas of the 10 areas that we measure. These include, they increased the quality control of construction permitting. They implemented online services in registering property. They improved protecting minority investors indicator by making it easier for minority shareholders to sue directors who are self-dealing. And by establishing an online system to pay and to file and pay taxes, and by increasing the judiciary system in enforcing contracts. As you can see, Rwanda performs quite well in most of the areas that is shown by the bigger blue area. The areas that the country performs the best is getting electricity, which is, not getting electricity. The best is registering property, getting credit, and protecting minority investors. And the areas that the country performs rather poorly is obtaining construction permit, obtaining electricity, and trading across borders. Mauritania is has also reformed in 5 areas last year, including starting a business. It increased the, it streamlined the registration processes of starting a business and decreased the number of procedures and the days it takes to register property. It increased the transparency in registering property. It decreased the time spent on filing taxes. It improved the trading across borders. For example, it removed the procedure that imposed weighing of all the cargoes. A good practice will be that you weigh selected cargoes, not all of them. And it consolidated the fees to decrease the time spent on paying fees. It also increased the transparency of judiciary system. Lastly, Morocco. Morocco obviously is not in Sub-Saharan Africa, but it is in North Africa, and it is the country that both Spain and Casa África has an interest. Therefore, I have just brief information on this as well. Morocco traditionally has been a high performer in terms of its reform efforts. In the previous years, it was in the top 10 improver. This year, it reformed in 2 areas, starting a business and paying taxes. It combined the stamp duty payment with the application for business incorporation, decreasing the procedure and time spent on registering business. And it introduced an online system for paying taxes. The country performs the best in construction, enforcing contracts, and paying taxes, and rather poorly in getting credit, resolving insolvency, and protecting minority investors. With this, I end my presentation, but let me just give you just a brief summary of what we have on Sub-Saharan Africa in terms of the strengths and the bottlenecks in the region. What we see is that the region's efforts are focused on starting a business, improving the regulatory environment and getting credit, starting a business and trading across borders. We see a lot of efforts by the governments decreasing the time it takes to comply with the regulations in the 11 areas that we measure. I mean, I switch back and forth between 10 and 11. That's because although we measure 11 areas, we do not include the labor market regulations in the rankings. So when I say 10, I mean the indicators that we include in the rankings. When I say 11, that includes the labor market regulations. So the economies in Sub-Saharan Africa recorded a big improvement in reducing the time to comply with the regulations. However, the cost has still been among the highest cost in compared to other regions, and there is more. There could be more improvement in this area. Of course, one of the reasons for this area being difficult is that governments might be relying on the fees that they collect from the private sector in dealing with the regulations. For example, when they obtain construction permit, they pay fees that goes to government. Governments then invest that back into community. However, one has to consider both pros and cons of those fees and find a way. World Bank has a lot of technical assistance, reform advisory services that assess all of these and recommends the governments what is the best way to go, both in terms of ensuring good finances for government and promoting the business environment. At the end, development without private sector is impossible. Government cannot provide the employment, cannot undertake the production. It's the private sector that drives the development and both economic and social development. Another observation we have in Sub-Saharan Africa is that obtaining electricity, among all the 10 indicators, obtaining electricity probably needs the most attention, considering that the cost is prohibitively high and the reliability of the electricity is the lowest in the region. And that area needs probably both from the regulatory perspective and also from the infrastructure perspective most attention. Thank you very much.